The world has moved on and time has grown strange.
Cars are real, Doc.
Ka? What does Ka mean?
It means you're playing someone who's going to destroy you.
All things serve the bee.
Tell the man in black I say hello.
The world as Roland had always known it would be swept away. It starts here. From its field of roses, the Dark Tower cries out in its beast's voice. Time is a bass on the water.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter or X or whatever the hell Elon Musk is calling it these days, and every other level of social media at TowerJunkiesPod. And finally, if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer for an obscene amount of bonus content spread across all of ObsessiveViewer.com's various podcasts. And if you want specific Stephen King related content, there is a $4 per month tier on Patreon that is only Stephen King related content. On it, I have literally almost 2 days worth of audio of me doing book reaction recordings for Stephen King work. Like you could run it from beginning to end and it will take 2 days to listen to it. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. You also get commentary tracks and other fun stuff on Patreon. So again, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. The money I make keeps me alive and also keeps the podcast alive. So by the transitive property there. So again, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurd, and today on the show, we are continuing our podcast journey to the Dark Tower by concluding our coverage of the Gunslinger with this episode devoted to Chapter 5, titled The Gunslinger and the Man in Black. We are finishing the Gunslinger today, and joining me to do that, of course, is my commate, Tiny. Hi, Tiny. How's it going? And trust me, I did not pause because I forgot your name.
Hey, buddy, I'm doing good.
Nice. So today we've got a packed show. It's going to be a lot of fun. What have you been up to and everything? And how do you feel about the Patreon exclusive thing that we recorded before this?
Very good. Very, very good. Yeah, we broke down kind of the whole book of the Gunslinger. We talked about our history with it, had a little circa 2001 flashback to a trip we shared.
Yes.
Which sounds kind of like you and I took a mescaline or something. That's not what I meant.
Yeah. Well, no, it was okay. So I know that this is behind the paywall and everything, but just so you guys know, basically Tiny took mescaline and then encountered an oracle in a deserted area. That was trying to, or a succubus, I'm sorry, and was trying to gain control of me, but he took mescaline to fight it off. So.
Nice. Yeah, that old chestnut, you know
yes.
How it is. But life is going good. New job.
Nice.
Doing a
Congrats.
lot of volunteering. Thank you. A lot of volunteer stuff's going really well.
Nice.
To that note, if you want to see some funny ass pictures of me, go to the Speedway Lions Club Facebook page. I participated in a adult tricycle race. Well, a grown, I don't want to say adult because that makes it sound like porn or something.
Right.
Trust me, it's not appealing in the slightest. I participated in a charity tricycle race. And it's pretty funny. So, you can see a picture of me on a tricycle.
Okay, so here's the thing, Tiny. Like, I don't know how, because I've kept this so, like, secret and everything, but how did you know what my OnlyFans username is? Tricycle, what was it? I had it in my head. Tricycle race or something. What was the middle word? I fumbled all of that.
Charity tricycle race.
Charity tricycle. That's what it was. Charity tricycle race. That's my OnlyFans name.
That is the most specific fetish that's ever been conceived.
That's so
that
dumb.
Would be the only thing. That'd be the only thing you could plug into a porn search engine and get 0 results.
Yet.
Not that I'm asking you to test that.
Right. Oh, that's
and
ridiculous.
We're already off the rails.
Yes, I will dig up the link to all of Charity Tricycle Race's work and put it in the show notes. And by that I mean the Speedway Lions Club link will be in the show notes so you can see Tiny on his tricycle.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, that's good. That's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I've been, keeping busy with Patreon stuff. It's funny because, like, again, this is like all just going to be plugging the Patreon. I'm sorry, but basically, today after work, I recently, like in the last couple of months, bought a new wireless mic setup. It's shout out to Rode. It's a wireless mic system. Basically, it's a receiver and a transmitter. I plug the receiver into my phone. It receives the transmitted signal of my voice from the microphone on the transmitter, and I record into my phone. Boom. It's how I do a lot of my TikTok videos and and a lot of Patreon stuff, like in the car. So
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. I'm very pleased with it. And so I have been using that and everything, and like I had it in my backpack the other day for work. Just because I thought maybe I'll get a little podcasting in the car. And then so last night I watched a movie, and then today after work, I broke out the wireless mic and I just hit record and just saw where it took me. No, I had a very long commute home today because traffic was crazy. They're doing construction downtown, as they always are. And they also recently implemented a lot of no turn on red signs downtown in Indianapolis. So basically it took me like an hour to get home from work, and it takes me usually like 35-40 minutes.
Damn.
Yeah, and in that time, I recorded 2 Patreon recordings. I did an immediate reaction for the horror movie Skinamarink. And then I also did a reaction recording to the Dark Half movie, which I'll talk more about that in Stephen King check-ins. But yeah, a nice little productive commute home. Obviously, since it's a wireless mic, completely hands-free, distraction-free. I had it clipped to my seatbelt, and basically I just pressed the record button and I just talked to myself while driving home. So anyway, that's another incentive for the Patreon. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Anything else, or should we jump into Stephen King news and check-ins?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, cool. So we have a lot of news here. I'm just going to kind of go through some of this, and we're not going to talk too much about it here and there. There's some things that are basically stuff that I talked about last week with Kim C, and then also some new stuff that popped up. So let me pause to cough because I have this little tickle in my throat. So I'm going to actually pause the recording. Okay. And so that was seamless, but I'm going to mark that actually. So anyway, we've got some news. One of the kind of fun things that happened is in a Rolling Stone interview for Holly, Stephen King shared an anecdote about how the song Mambo Number 5 was jeopardized his marriage to Tabitha. And so in it says, the question is, it's part of a big culture war, the right and the left right now, which is interesting, but I have to ask, I hear you're a huge fan of Mambo Number 5 by Lou Bega. And King responded by saying, "Oh yeah, big time. My wife threatened to divorce me. I played that a lot. I had the dance mix. I loved those extended play things, and I played both sides of it. And one of them was just total instrumental, and I played that thing until my wife just said, 1 more time and I'm going to fucking leave you." Which is awesome. And then in the interview, he goes on to say, like, the interviewer asked, "What were you writing at the time?" And so I saw this first. Fellow Stephen King podcaster Scott Wampler, he of Kingcast, had tweeted that and said, like, he tweeted a screenshot of the response of, like, what were you writing at the time? And he had highlighted, I think probably 11/22/63. And Bev Vincent, who obviously is very close to King, wrote The Road to the Dark Tower, all of this stuff. So he replied to Scott and said it was actually the final 3 Dark Tower books as documented in The Road to the Dark Tower, quoting his appearance on the Mitch Albom show. So I found that to be interesting. And then I replied, like, I had my own thing, which is, this isn't a spoiler for Wolves of the Kala. I'll say that. I will not, it is not spoiling it, but there's a dance number in Wolves of the Kala. So with that in context, I responded to the tweet saying, "Imagining King writing Roland dancing the Kamala at Calabrin Sturgis while driving Tabitha mad with Mambo No. 5 on repeat is super fun." So yeah, like, that's been in my head since I saw that, and I can't get it out of it. And it's kind of an absolute delight. I love it.
Yeah, it's peak King.
Yeah.
Needed a little bit of Monica in his life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. One of the sisters, Ariza, is maybe named Monica. Like, that's my headcanon now. But yeah, and that also reminds me to plug the King on Screen documentary that I interviewed the producer of a couple of weeks ago, which I believe is out now. Like, you guys can get access to it on VOD. But there was one part in that I didn't mention it in the interview or anything, but it stuck with me for a while. But I don't remember the context of the interview being held, but like there are sprinkled throughout that documentary some archival footage of King and a couple shots of Tabitha King. And there's like, when they're interviewing Mike Flanagan, he says something, I can't remember what it was that he said, but they cut to, and this is going to be so, sweet and saccharine, I guess. Is that the right word? I don't know. But anyway, they cut to archival footage of King and Tabitha, and like I don't remember what Flanagan was talking about in that scene, but just like that footage, that specific footage of King and his wife, like, you can just see the love between them. It is gorgeous. And it's just like, in the way that they're looking at each other, it is just so beautiful. And like, it was to the point where I got a little bit teary-eyed just thinking, like, that's beautiful. So anyway,
wow.
Yeah.
Pretty extreme.
Yeah. And then when I go back and watch it again, I'll just have Mambo No. 5 playing. But yeah. So anyway, that's a little anecdote from that. But any notes on that, Tiny, or shall we move on to more King news?
No, just pretty funny.
Yeah. So King, speaking of Holly, the new book, just the headline here is that King's latest book, Holly, tops bestsellers charts days after debut, which isn't a surprise at all. I mean, he's Stephen King. It's printing money, basically, alongside the book. I don't think there's anything really surprising about that, but I was hoping that I would get some statistics here. Yeah. Listed at a suggested retail price of $30, Amazon has Holly on hardcover on sale for just $19 right now, which is kind of, I don't know if that's intentional, but that's pretty nice. Yeah. And then, wow, okay, that link has a little bit of spoilers. Spoilers for like the first chapter. Yeah. And then, yeah, that's really all the check-ins no, the big check-in, the other check-in that I have. A trailer came out for coming out on Paramount Plus on October 6th, I believe, is Pet Sematary Bloodlines, which is the prequel to the 2019 Pet Sematary adaptation. This movie basically recounts the backstory of Judd Crandall and his experience and Ludlow's experience with the Pet Sematary. I sent you the link, Tiny, to the trailer. What did you think of it if you watched it? And what is your interest level for this movie?
When you sent it to me, I didn't even realize this was coming out. I've not been keeping up on King News very well.
Mm-hmm.
I when I first saw it, I was like, God, more Pet Sematary. Like, what are they doing? But then I watched the trailer and kind of read the synopsis, and I was like, all right, I'm actually into this. Like, I think it's
interesting.
Cool. I think it's cool. They're taking a new, like, it's not like they're remaking Pet Sematary. They're taking some context from the book and expanding on it and doing like a prequel thing. Like, I think that's a really cool idea. And, you know, the whole young Judd Crandall thing is a cool idea. And I almost would have preferred a series because I have not been watching movies. I've just been watching shows. But maybe a movie was a better investment for it and made more sense. I'm also not thrilled with Paramount Plus. I don't have that prescription. Or subscription.
I was gonna say.
But I'm my interest is piqued. For sure.
That's good to hear. I'm super glad to hear that because I really like it is very low on my priorities list. It's something that for me. Here's the thing. I don't understand where the interest is in this because if I don't remember if Pet Sematary performed well. I feel like it probably did decently at the box office, but I really didn't like the movie. I thought John Lithgow was good in it, but I didn't really care for it. And like the original Pet Sematary is fantastic. Like and obviously the book is amazing, but the original adaptation is phenomenal. And I don't care to explore the lore of it in the context of this current adaptation. Like, I'm fine with that movie just existing and me maybe seeing it again at some point just for S's and G's. But I just, like, I don't know. It just doesn't really interest me. Which is funny because, like, on the flip side, Welcome to Derry, the HBO or the Max kind of like it adjacent story that basically is the same kind of idea. It's exploring the history of Derry in regards to Pennywise through a TV show format. That I'm very intrigued by and very interested in. So I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm just so soured by the 2019 adaptation that I'll see it, but it's not going to be something I'm like very eager to watch. So
yeah, that movie wasn't great.
Yeah,
there's a few things I appreciated about it, but mostly was not great. So yeah, I understand that reaction. I was just kind of pleasantly surprised that it wasn't some entirely new, just random person coming up with some a sequel, a non whatever sequel. It's like a prequel and it's kind of based in the book. So I'm sort of on board with it, but I'm not like super thrilled with it.
That's fair. We will, of course, reserve judgment until we see it ourselves. But I will say that this is so dumb. I will say that in the world of adaptations, Stephen King adaptations, and Stephen King writes to adaptations, sometimes letting the rights revert is better. So dumb. Anyway, so that's Stephen King news. I have a few quick check-ins and then we can get into the episode. Do you have any check-ins, Tiny, first?
I don't. I kind of slowed down on the reading because I've been going hardcore with my volunteer stuff and I just don't have the time. But I'm going to start listening to If It Bleeds tomorrow.
Nice.
So yeah, I have that because no time constraint with that because I have it on Audible. So
nice, very nice. Yeah, I would. Honestly, with If It Bleeds, this is another just stupid thing for me, but the great thing about If It Bleeds is that as you read, like it's four novellas. Obviously, one of them is If It Bleeds, which has Holly Gibney and everything. But it's those 4 novellas. And the great thing is that after you read one of them, you can go on to Patreon and listen to my thoughts on that, and then read the next one, and then go on to Patreon and listen to my thoughts on that, because I did a whole series on on If It Bleeds. Also, you can check out last week's episode with Kim C, where we talked about Mr. Harrigan's Phone, which is the first novella in that collection. So yeah, I'm excited because I love that collection.
Nice.
In particular, I want to kind of like hand you a gift wrapped present right now in anticipation of you reading my favorite novella in that collection. I won't say anything about the novella itself, Tiny, but when you get to The Life of Chuck, just know that as of right now, Mike Flanagan has the rights to adapt that into a feature film. So do with that what you will when you read that novella. Also, it's my favorite novella of that collection. It is, yep. Again, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer.
Sweet. Sweet. Yeah, we got some new Flanagan coming out pretty soon too.
Follow the House Usher. Yeah. Nice. Always good for new Flanagan.
Word.
Yeah. And so my quick Stephen King check-ins are that I, upon finishing If It Bleeds, I think I may have mentioned this last week with Kim C, but basically I finished If It Bleeds. I did my Patreon review for it, and then I had a few days before Holly came out, and even more than that, I was getting the audiobook for Holly on Tuesday, and then the actual hardcover was being delivered by Amazon on Thursday. So I wanted to, I've been reading it, physically reading the book. So I was waiting until Thursday to get it in my hands. So I had a little bit of a gap. So I had Sunday to Thursday before I was going to start Holly. And what I ended up doing was I squeezed in The Dark Half, which is specifically, I read that because it was a Stephen King book I've never read. And after reading If It Bleeds, I was just hungry for new King, or new to me King, first reading King. So I picked The Dark Half, and I really had a lot of fun with it. Do you know anything about it, Tiny?
No.
Okay. So just really quick overview. I basically the Dark Half is about a writer named Thad Beaumont who writes under a pseudonym named George Stark. When his pseudonym is discovered and the cover is blown, he does this big spread in a magazine where they kill George Stark, and they pose. The writer poses over a fake gravestone and everything. And then, wouldn't you know it, George Stark materializes, comes to life, and starts hunting down people and killing them. So this book was fantastic. And here's the thing. I specifically said in the episode with Kim C, I believe I said this, that I was so excited to read The Dark Half because I wasn't reading it for the podcast. I had no goals of doing anything Patreon related. I was just looking forward to leisurely reading a Stephen King book for the first time. So starting October 8th on Patreon, there's going to be a 3-part read-along review of The Dark Half. Every Sunday, starting with the second Sunday in October, I'm gonna do I've done it. It's recorded. They're scheduled. That's happening because I can't. Much like Thad Beaumont, I cannot separate Like, the way that he can't separate himself from his pseudonym, I cannot separate my reading or my media consumption with Patreon and podcasting. So,
well, the first step is admitting you have a problem. So,
I don't think I didn't say it's a problem. But in addition to that, also, when I do the third one, which the third part I think is going to drop on, I think, October 22nd. That same day, I'm going to release a immediate reaction, thoughts on the movie The Dark Half, which came out in 1993, written and directed by George A. Romero. Watched that a few days ago. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, and I might also, just stacked here, like, it's just so busy. I am also on the roster to be writing an essay about The Dark Half for Midwest Film Journal for their annual No Sleep October series that they run every October. So check that out at midwestfilmjournal.com. They're fantastic. I also, a couple of years ago, or actually 3 years ago, did an essay for them about The Mist. So check that out too. So anyway.
Sweet. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of that. And then my final check-in is that I will say that patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, I am doing weekly read-along reviews of Holly. I am halfway through the book now. The first edition of my read-along review, it's a 4-part read-along review. The first part posted last Sunday, and the next part is posting this Sunday, and then I have 2 more, and then The Dark Half. All I'll say is that I am enjoying it quite a bit. And over the course of several months, I have been rereading, like, Mr. Mercedes and, like, the Bill Hodges trilogy, The Outsider, and If It Bleeds. Did all of that for Patreon as well. But while rereading those and reading If It Bleeds for the first time, I just grew to really appreciate Holly Gibney. And I'm really vibing with, like, getting to hang out with Holly Gibney in her own full-length novel. I think it's a lot of fun.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to finish it, and I'm excited to hear what everyone thinks of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get to it in the next month or so.
Yeah.
Which I hate to. A normal person would read it in a week or whatever, right. But I got this big project coming up, and I kind of have to devote a lot of time to that. So
yeah, you have a lot on your plate. So I don't. That's totally fine. Yeah. But yeah, so that is all of my news and check-ins and everything. Tiny, do you want to go into our final installment of our Gunslinger coverage in our Dark Tower read-along series and everything?
Let's effing do it.
All righty. So, this is the concluding chapter of the Gunslinger. It's titled The Gunslinger and the Man in Black. I believe it first was published in the magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction in November of 1981. And I believe that the original title was The Gunslinger and the Dark Man. But it was retitled to The Gunslinger and the Man in Black. So I have actually a pre-recorded previously on the Dark Tower section. So I will bring us into, I will play that, and then we will go into our thoughts on the Gunslinger and the Man in Black. We are going to be spoiling the whole book at this point, but we won't spoil anything further in the Dark Tower series. So keep that in mind. Here is me, recorded like an hour and a half or 2 hours ago, me giving you guys the previously on the Dark Tower. Previously on the Dark Tower. Roland and Jake make their way through a railway tunnel using a handcar cart created by the Great Old Ones. During this time, to distract the boy, Roland tells him a story of his childhood, which is also told in Wizard and Glass and the Gunslinger Born. At age 14, Roland discovered his mother having an affair with his father's court magician, Martin Broadcloak. Martin taunted Roland in order to spur him into an early trial to prove his worth as a gunslinger, in order that he would fail and be sent into exile, therefore ending potential trouble for the good man and Crimson King, to whom Martin secretly swore allegiance. Roland faced his teacher, Court, using his Hawk David as his weapon and deliberately sacrificing him in order to gain the upper hand and pass the trial. While traveling through the mountain, Roland and Jake are attacked by a pack of slow mutants who block the track in an attempt to catch them. Jake clears the obstruction just in time for them to escape, and they travel on to the edge of a deep chasm spanned by a dilapidated trestle. They abandon the handcar and start crossing on foot. Nearing the other end, Jake slips and Roland catches him, but the man in black arrives to offer Roland a choice. Let the boy die or never catch him. Roland lets Jake fall to his death and exits the tunnel with the man in black. So that was the previously on the Dark Tower. And so this one, just to kind of give an overview, basically after sacrifice, this is all taken from Wikipedia, by the way, guys. After sacrificing Jake in the mountain, Roland makes his way down to speak with the man in black, otherwise known as Walter. Walter reads Roland's fate from a pack of cards, which includes such omens as the Sailor, the Prisoner, the Lady of Shadows, Death, and the Tower itself. Walter states that he is a pawn of Roland's true enemy who now controls the Dark Tower itself. Man in Black also reveals that he was Martin. He then sends Roland a vision of the universe, zooming out past a red planet covered in canals, a ring of rocks, a large stormy planet, a ringed planet, and then the galaxies beyond. Blah, blah, blah. Roland refused. Oh, God. Okay. This is just so long. I'm so sorry. Attempting to frighten Roland by showing him how truly insignificant he is. Walter then asks Roland to renounce his quest. Roland refuses, and the man in black tells him to go west before putting him to sleep. When Roland awakens, 10 years have passed, and there is a skeleton next to him that he assumes to be Walter's. Roland takes the jawbone from the skeleton before traveling to the shore of the Western Sea. So, Tiny.
Yes.
We have now completed the Gunslinger. What did you think about this chapter, their palaver, everything that happens here? What did you think about it this time around?
It is quite wordy. Think about what it really is. It's two guys around a campfire talking. But of course, it's actually much more than that. They I always really appreciated the description of Walter, the man in black, going over the grandiosity of the universe, and
same.
The details of that were always so magnificent and just wild to think about, and it was like reading Carl Sagan or something like that. Very scientifically poetic, I guess, is how I would put it. But I always appreciated that part. That's one of the parts I always remember from this. I really liked this read through. We kind of talked about it in Patreon, but I think just, this is my third or fourth time through, and we really got to sit with it with this read through because, I listened to each chapter at least like 3 times for all of them. That was really nice to get all that detail. And just, I think maybe just being older and kind of a new perspective. I think, I said I was probably in my 20s the last time I read this one.
Yeah.
And now that I'm 36, I think maybe there's a bit of a different interpretation or a different experience with that age. But yeah, I really enjoy. This is my favorite read through of this book. I've got so much more from it than I have in past read-throughs, and gained a new appreciation for this prologue introductory story of this epic 7-book tale. I think I give it more credit now than I used to after this read-through. Yeah, really cool.
Nice. I'm the same way, obviously. Like, it's been such a blast reading through it and dissecting it part by part. Like, that has been so much fun for me, for us to be able to do this. And it's funny because, like you said in Patreon, that this series has been on our minds for, at this point, a third of our lives. Like, we were, it was 13 years ago that we read it for the first time, and math. But it's just so funny because, like, I do this kind of mental exercise every time, or like so often, but it's just funny to think that, like, hey, if we could go back 13 years to when we were reading the Dark Tower series and we could like tell our younger selves like, hey, you guys are like 13 years from now, you guys are going to be talking about this damn thing on a podcast where people listen to it, and like you're going to like share your Ka and share your Khef with like people on the internet talking about this thing that you guys are reading for the first time right now, 13 years in the past. It's mind-blowing. It's just cool. But yeah, to bring it back, like this introductory book, like the Gunslinger itself is beautifully written. It is like I've talked about it in the last 4 episodes that we've done on this, and this particular chapter is just so full of just beautiful prose. And I feel like, I think I said this in the last installment of our series here, but this book or this chapter feels like this is like the classic, like climactic scene of like a mega blockbuster thing. This is the hero or anti-hero, whatever you want to call him, the protagonist meeting his adversary, and they are having like their monologue. They're having their palaver, and then like in terms of the scope of that, the fact that the Man in Black is showing him the universe, the galaxy, and then the universe as a whole, and then trying to just show just how insignificant he is, like the description said, is just like, that blew my mind when I first read it. And it's something that's stuck with me ever since. Like the analogy to like, what do you think a fish feels when it's just yanked out of its existence and thrown into like drowning on air and everything? Like, what do you think that they think? And I'm just like, that kind of blew my mind when I read it 13 years ago, and it's still something I think about here, just the perspectives of everything. The other thing that really sticks out to me is when the Man in Black is talking about how, like, if you destroy an anthill, you could destroy an anthill. I'm not sure what the analogy was, but you could destroy like all of those like ants contain an entire universe themselves. And just like the scope of that was just mind blowing to me. Yeah.
And those aren't original ideas of King's, of course, but his interpretation of them and their context to this overall story and this multiversal story that it is, it's so appropriate that it's at the end of the beginning of this story where that concept is planted in the reader's mind. I always appreciated that so much as well. It stuck with me from the first time we read it. Another part that I typically, I'm not a fan of any kind of any kind of mysticism that's like that people use as a tool. I'm not into astrology at all. I'm not into any of that stuff. But
spoken like a true Pisces. I don't even know what like. I agree with you. I was just making a joke.
That's awesome. I'm a Capricorn, by the way.
Oh, there we go.
No, but I'm not into that, any kind of mysticism at all. But for some reason, tarot cards are just kind of fascinating. I think the reason why is because there's a level of art to them. There's always, there's the like the depiction of the hanged man and death and the other, I don't even know what the other ones are, but like I'm not that into it, but I find the concept kind of interesting, just because I think it's like one of those things where you introduce an idea into someone's life, and because you introduce that idea to them, if you draw the 7 cards for them, that influences how they move forward in their life or how the next month is going to play out in their life, because you've planted that seed. So even though the idea that drawing these cards is an actual prediction of their future is bullshit, the fact that you planted the idea in their mind can influence how they go through their life. And like that can be a real thing. Like And that's true of astrology as well. You know,
Mhm.
if someone reads their horoscope and it says they're going to do whatever today, and then that happens, it's because you planted that idea in their mind, not because there's any actual mysticism that drives that. You know, it's
Mhm.
still an interesting idea. I like tarot a little more because I think there's this idea, these concepts of art and the concept of chance to it, as opposed to a horoscope, which is just a bunch of bullshit someone spouts out and then they post it on a blog somewhere and you read about it, or a little newspaper or whatever
Mhm.
like that. But I don't know. I find the idea of tarot kind of interesting, and I really should have researched more about it and kind of applied a bit of interpretation to the cards that Roland is drawn. But I didn't do that.
That's totally fine. I was going to say, if you guys are listening to this and enjoy this, go check out Kim C's coverage of the Gunslinger, because she goes in depth with the tarot card reading on
Nice.
the year
I'm
of
gonna have to
Under
listen to
Stephen
that.
King. It is phenomenal. I highly recommend
That's
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes and everything. But yeah, that's such an interesting angle to come at tarot card reading. That's really interesting to me, because it does have this kind of built-in sort of, maybe not self-fulfilling prophecy, but yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit. It is something that's
Right.
just by the fact of reading what's laid out before them completely by chance, you are influencing how they interact with the world going forward. It's really interesting. And given that the Man in Black is a mischievous asshole, like, that could be like what he's doing here too. But yeah, that's really good. I like that.
Nice.
Yeah, the actual reading that he gives him is like, it's ominous. Like, knowing the series and everything, it's just really appetizing. In Patreon, we kind of talked about how we've been so far removed from our first experience reading this book that it's hard to kind of put us back in like 13 years ago in our shoes then, to kind of figure out like where we were when we first read it. But coming at it now, like having this deep relationship with the work, and reading it with a fine-tooth comb, I just feel like my hope for people reading this series for the first time is that this final chapter opens them up to the possibilities going forward. Like, I'm really hopeful that if someone reads this for the first time, they are intrigued by what they hear, read, and see, and that is something that propels them on to the next book, that makes them excited to see what else is in store for Roland and whomever may join him on the quest to the tower. That's my hope, at least. But as a standalone, not even standalone, but as, like you said, a prologue to the series, I think that this book is brilliant. Beautifully written and brilliant. I love it so much.
Nice.
Yeah. The other thing I really liked about this chapter that stood out to me was the little sprinkling of religion, and in particular, like, Christianity in it. So we've had, like, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know religion all that well, but the part where where the Man in Black refers to like, he's such a dick. He refers to Jake as Roland's Isaac, which is a reference to the Bible where God asks Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And he's like, dude, I'm not going to do that. But like, I just like that little like jab there, and like the fact that Roland has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And then there's another reference, like he refers to either not the Crimson King, but like an underling of him as he's known as Legion, which I believe is from the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there was one other thing that I can't really remember, but yeah, I just like how that's kind of sprinkled in there, because Stephen King is someone who writes religion into his stories in such interesting ways. And I just find it interesting that here it's kind of written as a thing that is knowledgeable to people reading it in real life because, it's everywhere. But he's using it as a way to signal to us that like, yeah, there's more stuff going on. It's not a religious story, but it's something to signal that like, yeah, there's like with the Hey Jude stuff and everything, there's stuff that's like, we're like the world next door is how the Man in Black references it in like the first or second chapter. But it's interesting to see that just kind of filter in, throughout the book. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it also plays into the obvious concepts of good versus evil. That's obviously one of the themes of this whole story. And I don't mind. Yeah. I don't mind the biblical stuff. I don't think it's blatant. Like, I don't think it's, King trying to make the argument that, Roland is a heroic savior or,
right.
He's not divine in any way, nor is the Crimson King the devil or anything like that. I think he's just applying familiar concepts to drive home a point. And I appreciate that. I mean, that's what he's good at,
Yeah.
So yeah, I especially love the, this is my, token mention of George Guidal's performance. I love his delivery of the when Roland asks what his name is, his delivery of Legion.
Yeah.
It's really subtle, but it has a tone to it that feels it's kind of zealotous. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's like oddly devotional and like a bit of intensity in the devotion and the way he delivers that line, the way that the Man in Black says Legion, like it just has a tone to it that I appreciated and was a bit eerie. And I never read it that way, and so I just appreciated that. I think that might be the only. I did kind of appreciate the way he recited dialogue from the Man in Black as well. It was a bit the way he was a little condescending towards him in the beginning, where he's like, gather wood for a fire, and he's just very. I'm butchering it compared to what he did, but I just like the way he was. It had this tone of condescension to it, because it's like the Man in Black knows that Roland has fallen into his trap and he has him right where he wants him.
And I love how that's kind of turned on its ear as well when Roland is asking him all these questions, and he's asking him like who's in charge, or who's this, or who's that, or what's this and what's that, and then he realizes that like the Man in Black doesn't have a clue, and he's like, oh, you don't know, like great sorcerer like Martin Broadcloak or whatever, like you don't even know, like what it's kind of like, it's not presented that way. He's not as condescending or rude as that, but it's like it's a little tiny sliver of like what Roland like Roland's version of humor. Since he's such a dry character, like that's I don't know, it's just like this humor steeped in contempt. It's really, I love that. And George Guidal's delivery of that's fantastic as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like Schadenfreude. He's relishing in his squeamishness about it.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And again, it's very subtle. It's not it's not over the top at all. It's perfect, great delivery.
Absolutely. And the other religious thing that I wanted to bring up was as well when the Man in Black, and this is so interesting to me. So the Man in Black, when he is showing Roland the universe, like he says like, let there be light. And then King infuses that with like Roland had the thought, it was good. So it's like, like the Lord said, let there be light, and it was good. And that happens again later. And I find it so interesting because King is someone, and I'm sure that we talked about this in part 2 or 3, or maybe part 1 actually, with Sylvia Pittston. But the King, obviously, like I said, he writes religion into a lot of his stories. Some of his best storylines are focused on religion and dark religion and the corruptibility of religion. The Stand, that is a massive tome. And I think that that's also why the Dark Tower stands separate from being a just strict good versus evil, because I feel like King poured so much of that good versus evil, religion versus zealotry, and faith versus free will, kind of all those themes packed into The Stand. But like, he has The Stand, The Mist, Revival, like so many stories revolve around religious kind of, I want to say indoctrination to an extent, but like religious fervor and everything. And when, like, I just love that the Gunslinger, and by extension the Dark Tower, it just lightly touches on that. And here, what I find so interesting about the use of religion as we perceive it, and like our version of religion in the real world, like in specifically like Christianity, is that the use of religion in the Gunslinger, both in Tull by Sylvia Pittston and by the Man in Black at this late stage of the book, is like, they're both just despicable characters who twist it around and use it to control and to use others. And I find that to be that's so vintage King, like the way that he works through religion and what I perceive to be his feelings about like organized religion and kind of the corruptibility of it. I just find it to be just so interesting how he has that like soft touch here in the Gunslinger. Did you pick up on that or anything?
A little bit. Yeah, I don't know. The religion stuff didn't jump out to me as much. I mean, it's obviously it's there, and like it's not that I didn't pick up on it, but
it's definitely not the focal point of the book at all. Like it's set dressing for it.
Yeah, and that's why it's effective, because again, I keep coming back to the term subtle, but I think that's an appropriate word. But yeah, it's woven in an appropriate way, to where you're not being beat over the head with it. It's just it's effective. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So this chapter ends with it's written as a time jump, but like we don't like, it's not necessary. Like it's Roland ages 10 years, and just like the jarring aspect of that is very satisfying in terms of it being, time has passed significantly. He's there with the bones of the Man in Black, who he believes is the Man in Black. And I really like the added touch of him taking the jawbone, kind of replacing the jawbone from before. I think it says it in the book that he replaces it. And then he heads on to his next adventure and everything. I just find it to be so interesting that the kind of acceleration of time in that, like, it's just like, that's the ultimate way to show that whether the time jump is due to him, like due to something that the Man in Black did, or if it's just the world moving on. It's really interesting to see that be like a kind of just an addendum to the story or what have you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of that is. Like, I don't know how it improves or advances the story, I guess. I think it's almost just like, hey, this is kind of cool. Like, it demonstrates the magic of the Man in Black, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure what purpose it serves, I guess, from a storytelling standpoint. It's not that I dislike it. It's obviously cool, but yeah, I'm not sure I guess I've never been sure what to take from that. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do with that, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. It is something that doesn't really have, at least not that I remember, have any real bearing on the story itself. I think it's just a cool, like, thing to put at the end, like, oh, hey, yeah, but when he woke up, he aged 10 years. I think that there's probably like a Rumpelstiltskin kind of thing in there or something. Yeah, I don't know.
I do kind of like the passage of time. To me, the aspect of the story that's a little more effective is the fact that when they begin their palaver, the sun is setting, and it essentially never rises until he wakes up 10 years later. So it's all taking place in the dark, and at one point, he kind of looks off to the east, or wherever the sun would rise in Midworld. And the Man in Black notices, and he makes a comment, and I don't remember it verbatim, but he says something along the lines of, you keep looking for the sun to rise and the light to come, and he's like, we're not there yet. And he's just kind of, it's like it was a tactic by the Man in Black to unsettle him or something like that. And for whatever reason, he wants, I'm sure there's some imagery there that we could read into, about, okay, once the sun comes up, we're going to move on to the next thing, and I'm going to get to do whatever. I think he's sort of thinking, oh, I can't wait to kill this guy.
Yeah.
And he thinks that that's going to bring forth that moment or bring forth the next step of this process. And it's funny, situationally funny, because clearly the Man in Black has total control over this whole situation. Roland is along for the ride. Yeah. And I part of me wonders if he was aware of that going into it, or if that was sort of a surprise to him. I'm not sure if that's ever made clear. I don't think it's ever hinted at that he feels powerless in this moment, or it's kind of interesting reading through it, because it's like he was building towards this moment, right? I mean, the most epic line of this whole series is the Man in Black fled across the desert and the Gunslinger followed, and here is the culmination of that line. He's caught him. They're together, and he's kind of powerless. Like he doesn't really have the ability to control the situation at all. And I don't. Part of me wonders, did he know that the whole time? Did he know that this guy is such a powerful sorcerer that he's not going to be able to really kill him or get revenge on him? Like he is fighting a losing war, and he's not winning the battles either. Like he's just along for the ride, and he's so out of control of the situation, and that's so obvious. But I feel like he doesn't. I think he understands that, but I don't know that he really reacts to that at all. He's never just like, damn it, I want to. Like, there's one time where he kind of has an outburst, and he like tries to reach across the fire and strangle him. He's like, I think he says something along the lines of, what my guns won't do, maybe my hands will, something along those lines. And that's when Walter essentially just puts him to sleep and sends him, sends him on his mind on the journey of what the universe is. And and even in that moment, like he can't even have an outburst. He can't even have a proper outburst. It's ripped away from him. So he doesn't seem to really demonstrate frustration about that, or even react to it. Really, it's almost like he knew this was going to happen almost. And it's just kind of surprising, because if that were me, I would just be festering like, God damn it, I want to kill this guy, or I want to do whatever. I need answers, and I want to kill this son of a bitch. And he's just an ant under his boot. It's kind of a fascinating read.
It is, and just their dynamic itself is just so fascinating to read as well. Like the whole, like the idea that he's been hunting him, and that he has been chasing after him with the thought that this man is the person who has all the answers. And even with the Man in Black having him under his heel and having this control over him, and all of the to use the term from the Flawless movie, all of his magics have just him just completely there. He's in control. But even then, like, he still has all of this power over Roland, even when Roland sees through this facade of power that he has, in terms of like not knowing all the inner workings, having not even really like communicated with his master, because he says like, well, I hear him in my head. And then he's like, wait, you don't actually know anything. Like, what are you doing? But it's really interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, because even with Roland chipping away at what we and Roland would perceive as the power dynamic that the Man in Black has over him, he still is exerting a certain type of power and magic over Roland in that. So the way that this whole palaver plays out is such an entrancing power struggle between these two men that is just, it is a wonderful culmination to the book. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I really appreciated this read through of it.
Yeah, same here. And is there anything else, or should we start winding down? Because I know that we're
I'm ready to
running
wind down,
late.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here. I don't have anything else, but I loved this read of it, and it's such a blast that we finally got a chance to start this project 6 years into this whole project, really.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So next time we're gonna keep going with we're not gonna take too long of a hiatus between this and the next one. But what I want to do is in the collection, Everything's Eventual, there is a novella, Tiny, that, have you read it? It's the Little Sisters of Illyria.
I never have.
Okay. So before we go to the drawing of the three, I think we should do an episode about the novella, The Little Sisters of Illyria, as it is a Roland Deschain story. So let's do it. I think that'll be the next episode or the next installment of this series. That's your homework, Tiny. We'll figure out the whens and hows and all that. But yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I've always meant to read it. So yeah, nice. Now no time like the present.
Yeah, awesome. So that'll come down the pike sometime soon. And then after that, maybe we'll do a Holly episode. If you get around to listening to Holly. But yeah, we've got a lot of ground to cover with both the Dark Tower series and Stephen King as a whole. So yeah.
Sweet.
I completely forgot to bring up in Stephen King news, the big news, that I teased out at it being stuff that I talked about last time with Kim C. But King lightly announced his next 3 books, basically. Did you hear about that? We chatted about it in Messenger. But basically,
go ahead.
I was going to say, basically, he has You Like It Darker, which is a short fiction collection. He said is going to be about 600 pages. It's going to be a big one. I assume that both Red Screen and Finn, those are 2 short stories that came out over the last couple of years in a couple different formats. I believe those are going to be, or I assume those will be collected in that collection. But that is one that's there were no dates or anything named or whatever, but I'm going to assume that that's our 2024 book from King. And then he also said that he is working on a new, another Holly Gibney story called, I can't remember what it was called. I
can't remember either.
Yeah. But then he also said that he is toying with the idea of doing The Talisman #3, which I have not read, The Talisman or Black House. We will eventually do that for this podcast, obviously, but they do tie into the Dark Tower series.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah. I don't remember what the name of that was, but anyway, We Think Not is the name of the Holly story that he's working on now. So, okay. That should do it for this episode then, Tiny. I think we're good. You have anything else to add or anything?
No, glad to be on on the journey. We've reached the beginning's end.
We have indeed. To quote Smashing Pumpkins, the end is the beginning is the beginning is the end. No, wait, I can't remember the name of the song. Damn it. Anyway.
I can never keep it straight either.
Yeah. It's funny. The complete tangent, but I always, because I'm weird, that song, it was obviously used in the trailer for Watchmen, but I will only ever associate that song with Lost, weirdly enough. Did not appear in Lost at all, but I was very, very much like, oh, this feels like Lost.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. So not sure what we're going to do next immediately. Probably the Little Sisters of Illyria. So look for that in your podcast feeds eventually. But in the meantime, consider joining Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Tons and tons of audio content, different tier levels. They just included or just added a new collections feature. So basically, if you sign up, you can go to the posts, and I have them separated by collection. So if you just want the Stephen King stuff, click the Stephen King stuff. I also have a separate collection just for Stephen King book reactions. So if you want like all that 2 days worth of stuff, sign up on Patreon, go to that collection, take a look at it. I did read-along reviews for Fairy Tale, for Billy Summers, for Skeleton Crew, Night Shift, different seasons, and a bunch of other books and everything. So like I said, it's like 50 some odd episodes and 2 days worth of content. So a lot of stuff there for $4 a month if you sign up on the Stephen King tier. So anyway, I'm going to start playing us out. Also check out the other shows, Obsessive Viewer and Anthology. Tiny, it has been a pleasure going through the Gunslinger with you. Looking forward to continuing on our journey.
Always is.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, final plug for Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. But no, it was like to their credit, whoever, like the school or whatever, they packed so much into the itinerary. Like,
word.
It was incredible. And having said that, I like so much of it is a blur to me, is like, especially this far removed from it. Like I remember certain highlights. I remember Ford's Theater. I remember being at Mount Vernon, Arlington Cemetery, and I feel like the world's longest escalator or something. And I remember being at the Capitol, and I remember like flying a Confederate flag and like having a bunch of like face paint on and screaming about Trump. It was all a blur. That was a really good tour. Jesus Christ.
Nice.
But no, I do remember certain things. I do not remember Apotheosis from that trip, and that's pretty interesting. Yeah.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.